Welcome to week 10 of the TA session of Structural Analysis 1, taught by Professor Amit Shah. I'm Jisha Chakraborty, one of the course teaching assistant. Yes,
Okay, Anu.
are you okay? I'm a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I start with a brief recap. For the first 6 weeks, we looked at determinate structures, analysis of determinate structures. In week 1, we looked at types of internal forces, common classification of elements and boundary conditions, structural indeterminacy, and bending moment and shear force diagram, which are the force or stress type responses of beams. And in week 2, we looked at idealization and stability of trusses and solving the member forces in a truss. So that is the force or stress type responses of a truss. There are two methods: method of joints and method of sections. And then week 3, 4, and 5 focused on the displacement or the strain type responses. So principle of virtual work, unit load method to determine displacements in a truss. In week 4 and week 5, that was about beams, like to find the deflection profile of beams. So elastic curve equation method, which is the direct method by starting from the governing differential equation and double differentiating it, and moment area method and conjugate beam method, which are shortcut methods which have certain rules, which by following we get the slope or deflection between certain points, like two we have to choose 2 points or 3 points and then find the response, the displacement responses at that points. But the elastic curve equation method gives us the entire deflection profile as a function of x, where x goes along the length of the beam. Week 6 was about influence line diagrams, the Muller-Breslau principle, which gives influence line diagrams qualitatively, but then we saw how to find it quantitatively. It is easy enough when if your concept of bending moment and shear force diagram is clear, and from that influence line diagram or ILD, we get the absolute maximum bending moment and shear force under point loads, series of point loads, and uniformly distributed loads greater than or lesser than the span. And one second. Just give me 1 second. And getting these values involve the principle of linear superposition. Then in phase 2, which we have been looking at in the past 3 weeks, analysis of indeterminate structures, review of structural indeterminacy. So far, we have only looked at static indeterminacy, introduction to force and displacement methods, Maxwell-Petty's reciprocal theorem, method of consistent deformations, which is a force method, and today we'll look at degree of kinematic indeterminacy because we were moving forward to displacement methods. So week 6, 7, 8, and 9 were all about the method of consistent deformation applied to beams, trusses, and frames respectively. Today we'll look at slope deflection method, which is the first displacement method. Now, structural indeterminacy structures that cannot be analyzed using statics or equations of equilibrium only are called indeterminate structures. They require other material properties to be solved. The degree of indeterminacy is number of unknown reactions minus the number of equations of equilibrium. External and internal indeterminacy total add up to give total indeterminacy, and we have looked at how to find internal and external. Internal indeterminacy is generally comes when there are extra members of trusses, like we need only one diagonal member for a determinate truss, but if there are multiple members, that can cause internal indeterminacy. And external indeterminacy manifests in the form of extra support reactions, like if it's a 2D object like a structure, then if there are more than three support reactions, will have external indeterminacy. And adding up the two, we get degree of structural indeterminacy. These examples we have already looked at: cantilever beam, prop cantilever. Cantilever beam is a determinate structure. This is 1 degree indeterminate, this is 3 degree indeterminate. And a brief summary of the two types of methods: force or compatibility or flexibility methods. Here the redundant forces are chosen as unknowns, and additional equations are obtained by considering the geometric conditions imposed on the deformation of the structure, which are compatibility conditions. Method of consistent deformation: unit load or virtual work method, strain energy method, method of minimum potential energy, flexibility matrix methods. These are all force methods. And for displacement methods or equilibrium or stiffness methods, displacements of joints are taken as unknowns, and equilibrium equations are expressed in terms of these displacements and internal loads. These equations are solved to give the actual joint displacements from which redundant forces can be calculated. Slope deflection, moment distribution, and stiffness matrix. So today is week 10. We will look at slope deflection method. The next week moment distribution, and the final week will be about stiffness matrix method. Summary of the difference between the two methods. Unknowns are taken as internal member forces or reactions in force methods, and in displacement methods, the unknowns are taken as joint displacements. In force methods, to find the unknowns, compatibility conditions are written, and in displacement method, to find unknowns, joint equilibrium conditions are written. So they are all duality. Like here, forces are unknowns, here displacements are unknown. Here we write compatibility conditions, here we write equilibrium conditions. And the method is suitable. Force method is suitable when degree of static indeterminacy is lesser, because that is the number of unknowns here, and obviously we would want to solve a lesser number of equations. And when degree of kinematic indeterminacy is less, we would prefer displacement method. Now let's look at what kinematic indeterminacy is. Degree of kinematic indeterminacy, dk, refers to the total number of independent available degrees of freedom. So it is a very different from static indeterminacy. Static indeterminacy, we look at, it is about it is about the forces, it is about the unknown forces and the equations of equilibrium. But kinematic indeterminacy is a completely different way of looking at it. It is about the total number of independent available degrees of freedoms at all joints. The degree of kinematic indeterminacy may be defined as the total number of unrestrained displacement components at all joints. So now consider every joint in a 2D truss. There are 2 degrees of freedom independent: x displacement in x direction, displacement in y direction. For the 3D truss joint, okay, so why are we not considering moment here, like a slope or a rotation here? Because in a truss are two force members, like every joint, every member in a truss is two force member, and all the nodes are basically pinned, so there are no rotation is not in consideration there. So 3D truss joint, similarly, they have 3 degrees of freedom: displacement in x direction, displacement in y direction, or displacement in z direction. For 2D rigid joint, this rigid joint is basically any joint in a beam or a frame. It's not in a truss. So for 2D rigid joint, we have displacement in x direction, displacement in y direction, and rotation in z direction. That's because if it's a 2D plane, this is 1 degree of freedom, this is 1 degree of freedom in mutually perpendicular directions. And if you take the in plane rotation, the direction of the rotation is out of the plane. So that's why we are writing theta z. And for 3D rigid joint, there can be three translational degrees of freedom and three rotational degrees of freedom. So 6. So degree of kinematic indeterminacy, see, for truss, for 2D plane truss, in a pin jointed plane truss, each joint is having 2 degrees of freedom, delta x and delta y. Therefore, j number of joints will have 2j degrees of freedom. And we have RE support reactions. So at support, joint displacements will not be available in the direction of reaction. This means that in a truss, if there is a hinge support at some point, at a point, then neither x displacement nor y displacement is allowed. So that I have to subtract. Similarly, if there is a roller support at the other end, X displacement is allowed, but the Y displacement is not allowed. So that is a restraint, so we have to subtract that. So it is very simple. The total number of unrestrained displacement components at all the joints will decay will be 2j minus Re. Similarly, for space truss or 3D truss, it is 3j minus Re. Rigid jointed plane frame, we don't see beams separately because I've already said this before. Beams and frames are not structurally different. It just varies about what the type I am loading. If I am only loading in a transverse direction, we call it a beam. If it also has axial loading, we call it a frame. But structurally, they are the same. So you can just take the formula of frame and treat all the, like, all beams are frames as well, but all frames are not beams, like that. Rigid jointed plane frame 3j minus Re, and rigid jointed space frame 6j minus Re. These are three here and there are six here. So in above analysis, all members are considered axially inextensible, and all above displacements are elastic displacements. For special cases, in rigid frame, if some of the members are axially rigid, then axial displacements in such members may not be available, hence degree of freedom will be reduced. We'll look at examples of this M double dash. To determine the degree of kinematic indeterminacy for given cantilever, if beam is axially flexible, if beam is axially rigid. Now J is 2 here, A and B, and RE is 3 since this is a fixed support, so Fx, Fy, and Mz. Decay using the formula is 3j minus Re when it is actually flexible. So decay is 3 into 2 minus 3, which is 3. And if beam AB is actually rigid, like, I have to assume that it is actually flexible in the sense it can elongate or shorten in the axial direction. That is a general assumption. But if I tell you that AB is actually rigid, then you have an additional condition here, that since A cannot move laterally, like in the x direction, B also cannot move in the x direction, because A and B cannot have any relative displacement with respect to each other. So the delta x gets cancelled out from B as well. So I have only two degrees of freedom here, which is vertical, like transverse vertical displacement in B and rotations at B. Determine the kinematic indeterminacy for given beam when decay, when member AB is actually rigid. So basically, if this axial rigidity concept is there, you have to subtract the number of actually rigid members, because that will take away an additional transverse degree, longitudinal degree of freedom.
Yes, ma'am.
1 second, just 1 second. Yes, so here the J number of joints is 2, and number of reactions is 2 here, 2 here. So but you have to see it logically, that you, in the formula here, it just says that subtract the number of members which are actually rigid. But see here logically that A has a hinge support, B has a hinge support. So neither A nor B actually has any transitional degree of freedom. So it doesn't really matter if it's actually actually rigid or flexible. The number of degrees of freedom will remain the same, because it anyway was not going to, it was anyway not allowed to extend or compress. So here decay is 3j minus Re, which is 2. If we consider AB as actually rigid, decay will be the same, because axial displacement is already restrained by the reactions. So don't use these formulas blindly. You have to, like, if it's a very complicated or a very, very, like a truss or frame with a lot of members, you might have to resort to formula blindly, but especially in MCQ type exams. But in these simple problems, you can just visualize it for a moment and don't depend on the formula blindly. Special case in rigid jointed frames, some of the joints may be hybrid. Then this is again the case of like internal hinge, which we have seen. Let's see. What is the number of independent degrees of freedom of the two-span continuous beam of uniform sections? One, two, three joints, and one, one, three. So there are five support reactions. So RE is five, this J is three, so DK is four. What are the four degrees of freedom? There is this is completely fixed, so this has no degree of freedom. Here, this is, since there is nothing said about this actually rigid or flexible, so I'm going to assume flexible. So this point and this point both can move in the lateral direction, in the longitudinal direction, and they can also rotate. So there will be some rotation, some axial displacement. Kinematic determinacy of the frame. Now, if there is an internal hinge, the RR is, we know that number of members meeting minus 1. So, this is RR is 1. So, RR we have to add here because it's adding an additional degree of freedom. So, 3 into 4, the 4 joints, 5 support reactions, and RR I am adding. The
Ma'am, what? Ma'am, in degree of kinetic indeterminacy,
Yes,
there is degree of freedom addition over that.
yes, yes,
RE adds, RR adds.
yes. In degree of static indeterminacy, we subtracted it, right?
Okay.
And here we are adding it. Just let me check 1 second. Here we are subtracting it, the RR.
Yes.
Basically static and kinematic indeterminacy are completely like duals of each other. Like suppose you have a imagine you have a cantilever beam, just a simple cantilever beam. What can I say about it? That at the fixed support I have one support reaction in the vertical direction, one support reaction in the horizontal direction, and one moment. So I have three force related unknowns. So
Yes.
three components that help, like, push me towards static indeterminacy, but they push me towards kinematic. But if you, when you look at from the kinematic point of view, all the three modes of displacements are restrained. So then the number of unknown forces you have, the less number of unknown displacements you have. So since whatever degree of freedom is restrained is is basically something that is not displacing. You can, if that's how you see. So come to the fixed and free end of the cantilever beam. There is no forced restraint, so there is complete displacement freedom. So it can go in the x direction, it can move in the y direction, it can rotate. So you see there is a duality here. That's why in the formula when I'm subtracting the RR here,
Okay.
we
Okay.
are adding the RR here. It's basically it's an additional. Um, I don't know how to phrase it, but if you have got the
Cj minus Re plus RR. So
yes,
that is the formula is M minus 1, summation of M minus 1.
yes, and M dash is the number of members meeting at the particular internal hinge.
Particular internal hinge. Okay.
Yeah, if there is another internal hinge, then there, and if there are three members meeting there, so for that I will have a value two. 3 minus 1 2. From here I am getting 2 minus 1 1. So 1 and 2 I have to add. So this sigma and the M dash minus 1 is in brackets, and it is, and the summation is over each internal hinge. So you have to treat the M dash specific to the internal hinge,
Okay.
how many members are meeting at particular internal hinge. Okay.
Okay. Okay. That is the standard formula, ma'am.
Yes, it is a standard formula.
Okay. Okay.
So here for the beam, find degree of kinematic intimacy considering beam as flexible. So M dash here is, there are two members meeting. So for RR is 1, and this M double dash was due to the flexible or rigid thing, that is 0 because it is flexible. There are three joints. There are five support reactions, and RR is 1. So this is 5. So the if you take the total formula, 3J minus RE minus M double dash plus RR. So M double dash is the number of in rigid members, and RR is this with summation M dash minus 1. Rigid jointed frame, find degree of kinematic indeterminacy. So here it's an interesting question. Then assuming the beams are actually inextensible. So here the horizontal members are the beams. Like in a building frame, we consider the horizontal members to be the beam and the vertical members to be the columns. So here I have, if the beams are actually inextensible, it means I have four. My M dash is 4 here. Did you say anything, Akash?
Yes, 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 ma'am. Yes.
So there are 9 joints, and M double dash is 4 here because there are 4 beams. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 columns are not going to be considered here. So dk is 3j minus re minus m double dash minus rr. Rr, there is no internal hinge, so that's fine. And this support reaction, again I will reiterate, this is an unusual support reaction that sometimes shows up. Since it has the wheels, like these wheels automatically mean that the vertical direction displacement is restrained, and since it is a roller, the horizontal movement is allowed. But if it was a two-wheeled roller, the rotation would also be allowed. But since it has 3 wheels, the rotation is restrained. So it is like a hinge support. It also gives two restraints, but they are different. It restrains the wide displacement and it restrains the moment. So we find 16, decay 16, and we can visualize. So these at this point, see at these 3 points and these 3 points, the vertical displacement and the rotation is free in all of them. And here, interestingly, they have only shown a horizontal displacement in any two of these joints. Like since these are actually inextensible, the entire structure can move. Like if these are my two beams which are inextensible, they can move, but they cannot move with respect to each other. So it can sway, but it cannot elongate. So that's why any one of these three joints will have a vertical horizontal freedom, and the rest two will not have, because it's like if 3 points decide to move together, then if I know the displacement of one point, I automatically know the displacement of the other 2 points. That's why here there is 1 degree of freedom in the horizontal direction, and these 3 points also there is only one horizontal degree of freedom. You can draw it on this node also, you can draw it on this node also, but you have to draw it on any one node. And support reactions, it's obvious that the fixed support has no degree of freedom, the hinge has a free rotation, and this support has a free translation in the x direction. They add up to gives 16. So this is a visualization.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Previous question. That is the actual rigid member is equal to 4. How
Huh.
much that?
So assume here it says that assuming beams are actually inextensible. So as I said,
Okay.
in a frame, generally the horizontal members are called beams, and the vertical members are called columns. This is
Yes.
this beam doesn't have to do with the frame member. Okay, this is technically a frame, but if you go into a frame and you see the term beams, then you have to assume it in a building context. Like if you look at a building, we generally call the vertical members as columns and the horizontal members as beams, right?
Beam.
Huh.
Yes.
So that is here. It's a beam column sense of beam. It's not the beam truss beam frame sense of beams. Okay.
Okay.
So these four, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fine.
Okay. Not a vertical member is considered in that.
No, no, they are columns here.
Okay. Well, assuming beams are actually rigid. Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Yes, yes. So this is a similar kind of question as the previous one. Here, since there is an overhang here, this point is completely free, so it will have three extra degrees of freedom as well. Now we move on to the slope deflection method. In the slope deflection method, the relationship is established between moments at the end of the members and the corresponding rotation and displacements. The slope deflection method can be used to analyze statically determinate and indeterminate beams and frames, but we generally don't use it to analyze determinate structures because it will just unnecessarily complicate the problem, because it is quite an elaborate process. Now, the sign convention, we start with that. End moments, clockwise end moments are taken as positive and anti-clockwise end moments are taken as negative. So, MAB here is anti-clockwise, so it is positive, and negative, and MBA is uh, positive. And look at the terminology. When I'm looking at the end moment of a beam element AB, where not just beam element any element AB, when I'm at A, I call it MAB, and when I'm at B, I call it MBA. Similarly, if this was AC, I would call this M. Like if there was another member AC like this, there would be an M moment MAC due to that. Now, for slope, clockwise rotation are taken as positive and anti-clockwise rotations are taken as negative. So this might seem the same, like these two sign conventions are the same, but in moments and slopes are the dual things again. But like moment gives rise to slope, force gives rise to deflection in the like translation, you can say. So here theta A, you see theta A is in the anti-clockwise sense. Theta B is in the clock. Okay, theta B is also in the anti-clockwise. Sorry, one second. Theta A is in the clockwise sense. You can just see that it was originally like this. It was originally like this. It became this. So this is a clockwise sense. This is a clockwise moment. And B was B did this, so this is an anti-clockwise moment, and C again is a clockwise moment. So I still do this when I'm solving a problem. When I'm seeing anything, I use my hands to rotate and see what is happening. I don't know if like you might see and immediately imagine, but it's a safe way to confirm. Deflection, settlement, positive deflection. Those displacements are considered positive, which produces clockwise rotation to the member. So if this is a settlement, okay, this is not ordinary deflection. So when there is a this kind of settlement, it's providing a clockwise rotation, so it is called as positive. And those displacements or deflections which will be negative, which produces anti-clockwise rotation to the member. Derivation of slope deflection equations. Consider a segment AB of continuous beam as shown. So, okay, I won't go into the actually I won't go into the derivation details because they you will never be asked. So these are the final expressions that you need to know. MAB is MAB bar, which MAB is the fixed end moment, which we will look at how we are applying that. Plus 2 EI by L, 2 theta A plus theta B minus 3 delta by L. So this is for a particular member AB. So MAB and MBA are the fixed end moments, and we have a simple formula for that. We'll look at that. And this theta A is a rotation at A, theta B is a rotation at B, and delta is the relative settlement between the two. This is the relative settlement. Like if one goes up and one goes down, you have to take the relative. Like you have to add them because the relative settlement is adding up. And if they both settle by different amounts, then you have to subtract the two displacements. And you have to just see, to put the sign convention, you just have to see that the net settlement, does it rotate the member in the clockwise direction or in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay, so these are the formula, and MBA also has a similar formula. Now, well, it just has the only difference is the fixed end moment changes, and the two theta B and theta exchanges position. Now, the step one, we consider each span fixed and find fixed end moment for each span due to given loading. If any support settles, then we do not find fixed end moment separately because we already have considered its effect in derivation of slope deflection equation. Take theta and delta as unknown and write slope deflection equations for n moments. These are the two equations. This one and two here. This equation and this equation. For every member, you will have two equations. Take joint displacement theta and delta by using moment equilibrium conditions and shear equations. Number of moment equilibrium conditions is number of rotational displacement components, and number of shear equations is number of translational displacement components. This is where the kinematic indeterminacy will come in. So you see that if the kinematic indeterminacy is less, so if there is only 1 degree translational degree of freedom, you will only have one equation, and it will be easy for you to solve. So that is why when we were looking at the broad definition of force and displacement methods, we said that if the kinematic indeterminacy is less than the static indeterminacy, we would want to choose displacement methods because there will be less number of equations to solve. Step 4 is substituting the values of unknowns in slope deflection equations and determining the end moments. And step 5 is drawing the bending moment diagram by superimposing end moments BMD and free BMD for each span. Uh, we have done this form of moment method of consistent deformations. If we Since these are all linear elastic bodies, we can just take the fixed end moment. We will draw the fixed end moment, the bending moment diagram due to the fixed end moments, which will just be a straight line, and then we will superimpose the free BMD which we are going to derive, and you don't have to actually add them up. You can just write the, like, you can draw the bending moment diagrams over each other, and that will be good enough. So let's now look at an easy, a simple example. So fixed end moment has a formula here. If joint A rotates by theta A, then fixed end moments at A and B will be 4 EI. 1 second, no. This shouldn't be the formula. Wait. Okay, this PL by 8, PL by, let me see if I have the table anyway. Wait. Okay, so I hope you can see. This is a table. This is like a this is what you have to know this. Okay, because a fixed beam is not easy to solve. So you cannot just go and decide that I will solve the fixed end moment formula in my question. They won't, you probably won't have that much time. So one second. So this is the fixed end moment for some common loading patterns, like a fixed end moment with a simple with a point load at the center. At this end, it's minus PL by 8. At this end, it is plus PL by 8. For if it is a cantilever, it is a fixed beam with UDL, then it is minus WL square by 12 at this end plus WL square by 12 at this end. And if there is a point load at which is not at the center but at distance a from here and b from here, it is minus p a b square by l square here and plus p a square b by l square. So these three should be enough. Like I think the first three formula, if you know, that should be enough. The triangles and all that, you cannot remember so many formula, because civil engineering is not about remembering formulas. So I hope they will provide if it's any of the other ones, but these three are easy enough to remember. So for this, if I look at first, so now I will look at the span separately. I will look at AB first and BC first. Forget about BC now. I'm looking at AB, and in AB, what I'm seeing a point load at the center. So the friction moment MAB bar will be minus PL by 8, where L is 6 here. So 16 to 6 by 8. And this is MBA bar is 60 into, like it is P plus PL by 8. And for span BC, I will use the formula minus WL square by 12 and plus WL square by 12. So MBC bar is minus 36, MCB bar is plus 36. Now I will write the equations. I will have two equations from here and two equations from here, right? So MAB is MAB bar plus 2EI 2 theta A plus theta B minus this thing. There is no settlement here, so delta is 0. Now what do I know about this problem? I know that there can be no rotation at A, and I know there can be no rotation at C. So basically I just have one unknown here. In the entire problem, I have only one unknown here, which is the theta B, because none of these are settling also. So theta A is 0. So this equation will be in terms of theta B. So MAB is minus 45 plus 2EI by 6 theta B. And MBA will give me another equation here. I think there should be, yeah, they are effectively giving me the same equation. There's just some plus minus here. And member BC, BC is uh, BC bar plus 2EI by L, 2 theta B plus theta C minus 3 delta by L. Delta is 0 and theta C is again 0. So I get an equation in theta B. So okay. So now I have four equations. I've kept them. Now I have to write the joint equilibrium equations, where M, this is AB. Like, it's, imagine you are cutting just at the roller support B. Imagine you are cutting a section just to the right and the left of B. So I am getting AB span which has MBA like this, and MBC, and just to the left of B I have a MBA, right? And just to the right, I have an MBC. So what is the joint? The joint equilibrium equation is that the MBA and this should add up to give me 0, because they have to be equal. Like, it's a continuous thing, right? The moment at this side or this side cannot have a jump. So we have unknown rotation theta B, a rotational displacement, and 1 joint equilibrium condition is required. So MBA plus MBC should be 0, and I'm adding because they're both in the same sense, they're both in the anti-clockwise sense. So effectively, so my equation is that here I have an MBA and here I have MBC. I will add them. I will write 0. So now I have an equation which is a single equation which has an unknown theta B, and I solve that. And finally, I will final end moment substituting. Now I have all these four equations, so I will substitute theta B in this equation. So I will get MAB. I will substitute theta B in this equation. I will get MBA, and MBA and BC will add up to give 0. I know, so I don't have to actually solve that. And I have to solve MBC here when I put theta B here. So I know all the end moments. When I have all the end moments, see, these are adding up to be 0. MBA and MBC are plus and minus of the same value, because that is what the equation we solved. And now that I know that, now come to AB. Now AB is a simply is a determinate structure, because I know the moments, so I can just solve the support reactions, and I can solve the bending moment diagram and shear force diagram for this part, and for this part separately I can do that. And then this is generally how it is done. See, This is this part has a triangular bending moment diagram since there is a point load at the center. This part has a parabolic one. So I draw those separately, and then here I know that the fixed end moments is 47.25 here. We solved them, and 33.75 here. So they are a straight line. So the fixed end moments are always a straight line kind of diagram. And apart from that, I draw that diagram in the background. And then apart from that, I also solve the individual spans to get the actual to get the final end moments. And then we superimpose the two diagrams. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So there is another example here. So there are one, two, and I think three spans we have to take here. So what are the first of all, when you are solving a problem using slope deflection method, first of all you can just first you can look at what are the unknowns here. So theta b is an unknown, theta c is an unknown, and here at d theta d is an unknown, and there is a there can be a displacement also here. But since this, and technically it could have had a displacement in the axial direction also, but since there is only vertical loading, there won't be any axial displacement. We know that. So here also we write the AB, M bar AB and M bar B are 0 because there is no loading in this span. For this span it is simple, it is minus WL square by 12 plus WL square by 12. And MCD is interesting because D, it should be the same, right? One second. Okay, so CD is not, it should be
Correct.
treated, yes.
Corrected, ma'am. CD.
Why is it WL square by 2? Why should it be WL square by 12?
WL square by 12, ma'am.
Yes, it should be
That is
12. So if I take CD as a fixed, like slope deflection method, originally assumes that all the spans are fixed. So it should be WL square by 12 plus minus and plus again here. So following the exact same method here, we will have four unknowns. So we will have four joint equilibrium equations. What they will be that the moment has to add up to be 0 here, the moment has to add up to be 0 here, and the moment and displaced moment and the shear force has to be 0 at this end. So because at a fixed end, at a free end, we know that at a free end there can be no separate moment or bending moment or shear force, they always start from 0 there. So I will have four equations and I can solve the problem, and I'll draw the bending moment. So all of these are similar problems. You would have seen examples in the lecture and maybe in the assignment as well. So are there any doubts? Next class we'll look at moment distribution method. Okay, if there are no doubts, I'll end the class. Moment distribution in week 11 and stiffness matrix method in the last class.
hello, ma'am.
Yes, yes,
In MDM moment distribution method,
yes,
that it is a fixed end moment minus plus, that is the clockwise, anti-clockwise and clockwise moment is at the MA end, and fixed end moment at B.
yes,
The Hardy cross sign convention, uh, that is in MDM, that is
yes.
both sides are negative. There is a both signs are negative, na?
Okay, no, that is for bending moment diagram, right? That is not for fixed end moments.
That not for mixed end moment. That is the bending moment diagram.
Yes, that is a bending moment diagram has a weird sign convention because it is not just clockwise is positive, anti-clockwise is negative. It is like if you come from the left side, this is positive. If you come from right side, that is positive. It's a complete separate issue. So don't confuse that with this. In except bending moment diagram and shear force diagram, everywhere we can blindly say that this is positive, this is negative. This is positive, this is negative. Okay. So
Okay, okay. In MDM, Hardy cross sign convention, the both moment are negative, na?
how can both moments be negative? I'll have to look at it. I'm not right now.
Hardy cross sign conventions is considered that both because fixed end moment positive and negative signs are there. But in Hardy cross sign conventions, there is a
Wait, yes, yes, yes. Clockwise, no, clockwise moments are considered positive and counterclockwise are negative. They are saying. So, what do you mean by both moments are negative? Both moments cannot be negative, right? Then there will be not. There won't be equilibrium. Like, okay, okay, yes, yes. I mean, see, if this is a beam, if it is under equilibrium, then one. moment will be like this, one moment will be like this, then what do you mean by both being negative?
Both moment, both MA and the minus WL by 8, minus WL by 8, as a load is a concentrated, centrally pointed. And again, load is a UDL,
Hmm.
then minus 12 square by 12 as a AB, and moment at A, and minus WL square by 12 at B, moment at B.
I think one should be positive, one should be negative. Let me see one.
No, both signs are negative. In fixed movement, that is clockwise and anti-clockwise, but Hardy-Cross sign
Okay,
convention
okay,
is
okay.
both signs are negatives.
Okay,
So
okay.
please explain that.
I don't have, I'm not right now in touch with that. Okay, I have to look into the method a little bit. I'll explain next class because next class I'm anyway going to teach moment distribution method.
Okay, okay, ma'am. Okay, okay.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'll end the class
Thank,
then. Thank you for, yes,
thank
yes.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I'll explain next class. Thank you.